What is going on, everybody? It is the Icebreaker here, back with another video for some more NHL hockey content. And for today's video, concluding our divisional standings prediction series, we are ending things off here with the Metropolitan Division. Now, if you saw my Atlantic Division standings predictions, the Metropolitan is going to be more of the same. I'm a little bit bolder on this division. I think a lot of people are wrongly labeling this division as the Metropolitan. I honestly think that the Metro doesn't get nearly enough credit as a pretty decent division in the NHL. And I think there are a lot of teams that are a lot better than people think. So in terms of which teams I think will make the playoffs, I don't think it's going to be that much of a surprise. But what will be a surprise is probably the seeding. I think there's going to be some controversial takes with that. But without further ado, let's just get right into it. Metropolitan Division standings predictions. So coming in last in the Metropolitan Division, as well as who I am predicting to have the worst record in the Eastern Conference, I'm going with the older Pittsburgh Penguins with just 68 points on the season. I just think they are a shell of their former self. They've been consistently getting worse over the past 3 seasons, 3 years in a row, not making the playoffs despite having a legendary player in Sidney Crosby. But look, I look at this team. I think they're just lacking depth throughout the lineup. Given where I think they probably will stand this season, I think they're inclined to even get worse as the season goes on, because I think they could be a team that's maybe you want to be selling some of their parts to get younger. Now, picking the Penguins to miss the playoffs might not seem like a hot take. However, a team with Sidney Crosby on it, it might be a little bit hard to envision the Penguins being 68 points bad, because obviously last year they were roughly a 500 team. They finished with 80 points. I think with the solid core that they still have currently, I think they could probably finish in that range again. I think realistically, they could be still somewhat competitive. But like I said, I really just view this team as a one-line hockey team. Like, Sidney Crosby is the driving force of the Penguins at this point. And obviously, Brian Rust is solid, but he's always had trouble staying healthy, so that might be a factor as well. Raquel had a great bounce-back season. Can he repeat that, or is he going to regress like he did in 23-24? But apart from that, like, bottom 6 is not looking too hot. Even their second line, like Anthony Mantha, is he a top 6 player? And he hasn't really quite put it together the last few years. I know he's had some injury troubles, but what is he at this point? Like, I don't know what he is as a player. Just hasn't really shown anything since he left Detroit, to be honest with you. And then there's Ville Koivunen, who could be a pretty interesting player. Obviously, in a short stint last season with the Penguins, honestly produced pretty well. I think he had like 7 points in 8 games. So that could be a little bit of a bright spot there. One of their young guys entering their rookie season. Could potentially be in Calder Trophy conversations if he has a good season. But yeah, just apart from that, and of course, Evgeny Malkin centering the second line, in which will likely be his final year in Pittsburgh, and we'll see if he continues to play afterwards. But he's one of the guys also that's been declining as well. So yeah, just a lot of older guys on the team. Defensively, they're not very good, apart from Chris Letang and Erik Karlsson, who are, again, like 35 and older. So yeah, just not really sold on this team at all. The goaltending, same situation. Tristan Jarry has been really, really struggling the last couple of years. Arthur Shelovs projects to be the backup. I mean, had a good stint with Vancouver, did his best in the playoffs a couple of years ago, but hasn't really found his game since, at the NHL level at least. So I definitely don't envision a scenario where the Penguins do somehow make the playoffs. But just in terms of this division, I think I'm just higher on every other team, quite literally. I think there's just a lot more potential with other teams in this division, and Pittsburgh just doesn't kind of wow me at all. Again, just not a huge fan of the depth. Sidney Crosby's going to do what he can, but ultimately, I do think the Penguins are going to come out of the gate quite slow, and I think they're going to probably make some big moves early on into the season, and I think ultimately they are going to fall flat and be the worst team in the Metro Division. So I got them last, 68 points on the year. Second worst record in the NHL, in my opinion. Coming in at 7th in the Metro Division, having a slightly better season from last year, I got the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, last year they finished with 76 points. I think they can take a small jump forward and be roughly a 500 team. So I got them with 81 points on the year. Like I mentioned in my bowl predictions video, I honestly do see a lot of offensive potential with this team. I just think Rick Tocchet coming in behind the bench is going to be a key factor. I think he's going to light a spark under some of these guys. Just the John Tortorella experience just didn't work out. He was not a fan of young players, and I think Rick Tocchet has been known to be more of an offensive coach. And I think that's going to benefit a lot of their young stars, like Matvei Michkov, for example, who I think is going to have an amazing second year, quite frankly. And like I mentioned in the bold predictions video, I just see a lot of offensive potential. Trevor Zegras, I think, is going to have a resurgence here, going to bounce back from a couple of really rough seasons, staying healthy, and even in the lineup wasn't producing much with the Ducks. Travis Konechny is a near point per game player. He's proven that the last couple of years. I could see him maybe even having like 85 plus points, having the best season of his career. I think Couturier is capable of way more. I think he still has a lot left in the tank at only 32 or 33 years old, as well as other forwards on the team like Tyson Forster and Bobby Brink potentially having breakout seasons. Yeah, just really like the offensive potential, but what holds this team back is basically everywhere else throughout their lineup. Defensively, I don't consider them a very good team. Like, don't get me wrong, I am a pretty big believer in Travis Sanheim, but I don't think on a contending team he would be your best defenseman. I think he's probably more of a second pair guy. And, Cam York, I'm not sure what his ceiling is. I know he had a high offensive potential, but he has yet to really realize that. Same could be said with Jamie Drysdale. Just a lot of question marks on the blue line. And then even more so their goaltending. I think with Sam Ersson as the starter, their backup being Dan Vladar, I honestly think this quite possibly could be the worst goaltending tandem in the entire NHL, especially Sam Ersson as a starter. I just don't think he's a starting caliber goaltender. I mean, last year he had an awful season, and I don't expect him to be much better, especially with their lackluster defense. So yeah, I don't have a ton of faith in the Flyers taking a significant step forward, but with their offense, I think they are going to score a lot of goals, and that's what's going to keep them kind of hovering around a 500 record. But ultimately, I don't think they're good enough to make the playoffs. I think they're at least 2, maybe 3 years away from that, especially if they don't address the goaltending situation and don't get some help on the blue line. But look, I'm excited about the Flyers. I think they're going to be actually a pretty entertaining team to watch, but I just don't think they're quite good enough overall. So that's why I have them 7th in the Metro Division, 81 points on the year, in my opinion. Coming in at 6th in the Metro, I think a lot of people kind of expect this team to be around that range. I got the New York Islanders in 6th. However, I don't think they're going to be as bad as people think. I know a lot of people think they're like, getting young, entering like a complete rebuild or whatever, and are going to be one of the worst teams in the league. I don't think that's the case. I have them with 86 points. Obviously, that's not going to be good enough to make the playoffs. However, I think they're still going to be quite a competitive team. In fact, I think they're going to have a better season than they did last year. Now, last season, they finished with 82 points. Obviously, it wasn't a great year, very inconsistent. But look, they had their moments where they were kind of knocking on the door for potentially a playoff spot, and then they kind of faltered towards the end of the season, and they end up missing the playoffs by like 9 points. But entering this season, I think there's a lot to be excited for if you're a New York Islanders fan. With their roster that they have, I think they are decent enough to hang around. Just think the tough division might cost them a playoff position. Not to say that they really had a huge chance of making it, but when you have Ilya Sorokin, who is still probably a top 5 goaltender in the NHL, he's always going to give the Islanders a huge chance to win pretty much every game. And even looking at the rest of the team, like, I think it's an all right team. Like, their defense is still not bad. I do like Alexander Romanov. I mean, Adam Pelech, Ryan Pollock have been steady guys for the last like 5, 6, 7, 8 years, on the blue line for the Islanders. And obviously they've had some like health issues for the most part, and staying healthy has always been kind of in question for them. But when they're playing, they're still pretty solid defensemen. And then, of course, the X factor, in my opinion, is Matthew Schaefer. If he makes the team as an 18-year-old immediately, I think he's going to make an immediate impact as one of the better defensemen in the league. I mean, he's already looked like that in preseason. He looks like he's going to be a future stud, future top-end defenseman, probably going to be perennially a top 10, top 5 defenseman for the next like decade plus. And all I'll say is the Islanders, they really lucked out in the draft lottery because Matthew Schaefer looks like he's going to be an absolute stud back there. Even up front, I think there's some potential there too. I mean, Matthew Barzal only played, I think, 30 games last year, so if he's back fully healthy, I expect him to ignite the offense of the Islanders once again, and that should, make the Islanders improve a little bit this season. They still have Bo Horvat, who's one of the better two-way centermen in the game, arguably one of the best second-line centers in the NHL. He's an easy, he's an easy shoe-in for at least 25 to 35 goals and probably about a 60, 65-point season, maybe 70 even. Their captain, Anders Lee, still pretty solid, although I think he's like 34 years old now, but still a pretty solid 20-plus goal guy. Kyle Palmieri hasn't looked like he's slowed down at all. I mean, he still gives you, again, about 20, 25 goals every season. Decent depth. I was pretty impressed with the Noah Dobson trade that they did there. I know that losing him is going to hurt their team on the blue line, I would say, but they came out of it pretty well, acquiring 2 first-round picks, really trying to load up the cupboards there in terms of their prospect pool. That pipeline's looking a lot better now, especially, given them trading away Brock Nelson for Callum Ritchie, who projects to be an amazing top 6 forward as well. But back to that Dobson trade, getting Emil Heineman back. As a Habs fan, I think he has 20-goal upside and can be a really solid contributor on probably a third line for years to come. And then adding Jonathan Drouin from the Colorado Avalanche, who, although I don't think is going to have quite as amazing of an offensive season as he did, in those 2 years with Colorado. Just the talent, he's not really being surrounded with as elite talent with the Islanders, obviously. I mean, that's not a hot take saying that, but I still think that's a decent add. So some more additions of their forward group that I think should improve the team slightly. But ultimately, I still think they are going to fall short of the playoffs. I think they're just missing a couple pieces to really get over the hump. But I think the Islanders, regardless of how well the season goes, they have a bright future with their prospect pool now becoming one of the better ones in the league. I think there's a lot to look forward to. So, yeah, I got them with 86 points, 6th in the Metro. Not good enough to make the playoffs, but I still think they're going to be quite a competitive team this year. Now, I'm just going to fire a bunch of hot takes with this one. So, number one, if you guys didn't see my Atlantic Division standings predictions, I was not as bullish on the Atlantic as I am on the Metro. Like in the Atlantic, I only had the top 3 teams making the playoffs. In the Metropolitan Division, I actually have 5 teams making the Stanley Cup playoffs. So that's number one. I'm a lot higher on the Metropolitan than most people. Number 2, and this is a hotter take, I have the Carolina Hurricanes making the playoffs, but I only have them as the second wild card. I have them barely sneaking in. I have them 5th in the division with 96 points. And honestly, looking back at all the years that I've done these predictions, this might be my hottest take of all time. I'm not going to lie with you. I know that a lot of people are high on the Hurricanes this season. They had a good offseason. People are thinking that they're going to be even better than they were last year, and they finished 2nd in the Metro. But I'm going to be real. I think the Hurricanes are probably easily the most overrated team in the NHL. Now, it's no doubt that with Rod Brind'Amour behind the bench, the Hurricanes every year, they seem to be able to buy into a system. They're one of the better structured teams defensively, analytically, always among the best teams in the league. A solid defensive team, and honestly, I still think they're going to be a good defensive team. But goaltending to me is a concern. I think durability overall throughout their roster is a concern. And I think just the offensive punch, I'm not really sold on their forward group all that much. I think it's a good forward group, but it's not a Stanley Cup contending level forward group, in my opinion. Despite them going on several deep playoff runs, I think they're missing quite a bit, to be honest with you. Now, even in the regular season, they could obviously be one of the better teams in the league, but I don't know. I'm higher on other teams in the Metro, and Carolina just doesn't really scare me that much, I'll be honest. Obviously, they have good forwards. Sebastian Aho is a number 1 center. I think he is a slightly overrated, but he's still a really good number 1 center. Seth Jarvis, on the other hand, is an underrated guy, and I think he has potential to elevate his game even more. But apart from that, Andrei Svechnikov, he's coming off a rough season, and he's one of the guys that has had issues staying healthy, and he has yet to really reach his potential. And at already 25 years old now, I don't know how much better he'll be at this point. If he's just nothing more than a 25, 30 goal, 60-point guy, I just don't think that's good enough for a guy who was drafted 2nd overall. And as for the Nikolai Ehlers edition, I think a lot of people are expecting him to break out and be a point per game guy. I just don't think his ceiling is quite there. I mean, with the Jets, you could argue because he's always been playing in the second line, hasn't been getting, the appropriate minutes to really showcase his offense. But I think a 60 to 70 point player is more or less what he is. I mean, he's already like, 29 years old. I don't expect him to get any better than he's already been at this point. And again, the Ehlers addition is huge to help their offense, to complement it, but I don't think his addition moves the needle necessarily. Like, I don't think he's like the missing piece. He's not like a Mikko Rantanen, who obviously didn't pan out with Carolina, but he's not that type of player, obviously. And just in terms of the rest of the forward group, I don't think there's really enough elite depth there that can complement them. Just the goal scoring just doesn't really phase me. I think I like Logan Stankoven a lot. I think he has potential, but like, Taylor Hall and Jordan Staal, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, Jackson Blake is fine. He's coming off a good rookie season. I could see him getting better, but I don't know. I feel like there is a couple pieces missing up front, though. And in goal as well, like, again, durability with Frederik Andersen. I mean, it's a given. It's guaranteed every year he gets hurt. That's just how it is for whatever reason. A guy can't seem to play more than 35, 40 games a year. And even when he is healthy, it's night and day. He looks like the best goalie in the league for a couple of weeks and then completely shits the bed for the next few weeks after that. And despite that, Carolina has not been able to really miss a beat. They still, remain consistent as a team overall, and they play a really solid team game. But if they don't have a stud in net, even Pyotr Kochetkov, I just haven't been really impressed with him that much either. If they don't have that number one guy, I just don't think the Hurricanes are a team that really goes anywhere. But in terms of me only ranking them as a second wild card, like I said, it's a tougher division than people give them credit for. And I'm just higher on other teams. I just, like I said, Carolina doesn't really scare me that much. And I think the ceilings are much higher with other teams. This team has been able to do pretty well in the playoffs, but I don't see a Stanley Cup contending team really with this team. I think they've lucked out a lot with easier matchups in the past in terms of their playoff runs. And yeah, I'm just not sold on Carolina. That's my hot take. I got them fifth. I still have them making the playoffs, but I only have them as the second wild card. 96 point season for them. And, given my track record, whenever I underrate a team, they end up doing way better than expected. Now, I don't have them missing the playoffs, so it's not like I'm going to have them missing the playoffs and they'll go on to win a President's Trophy, because that's happened before with the Panthers and with the Bruins a few years back. But yeah, Carolina could obviously dominate, but for me, I'm just not entirely sold on the team. So that's why I have them fifth in the Metro. And kind of another hot take here. I got the Washington Capitals in fourth, and as the first wild card in the Eastern Conference, also getting 96 points. This was a team that was the best team in the Eastern Conference last year, right? They had 109, 110 points. And I just think it's inevitable that regression is going to happen here, very similarly to the Winnipeg Jets when I covered the Central. I think just a lot went right for Washington, and a lot of their players basically had career seasons. And, maybe some guys can build off of it, but I don't think everyone on the roster can replicate what they did. So yeah, I do expect some regression there. Now, shout out to Alex Ovechkin. Still had over 40 goals last year, officially became the greatest goal scorer of all time. But at 39 years old, I don't know what we should really expect of him at this point. Now, I still have him having a 30 to 40 goal year and about 65 points or something, just because it's Alex Ovechkin, and I don't know. I picked him to decline significantly entering last season, and obviously that didn't happen. So I don't want to look like a complete idiot, by predicting him to get 45 points and he ends up getting 70 again. So I'm just saying, okay, I'll probably get 60, 65. Dylan Strome had a really good season, was a point per game. I think he's proven that he is in that tier of number one centers. I mean, statistically, your point per game, you deserve to be a top line center, or you're that caliber of player. Lexi Protas had a career year last year. I think, in a top six role, I can see him building off of that. Tom Wilson is Tom Wilson, gives you a bit of everything. Every team needs a guy like Tom Wilson in their lineup, especially come playoff time. And I mean, he proved that in the playoffs. I mean, he was a big reason why Montreal got manhandled by the Capitals. Tom Wilson was a key factor there. Connor McMichael enjoyed a breakout season last year, and he's another young guy that can still do that. They have Pierre-Luc Dubois, who had a resurgent year. Honestly, the defense is not bad with John Carlson and Matt Roy and Jacob Chikrin, Rasmus Sandin. Goaltending's pretty good. I really like Logan Thompson. Obviously, Vegas fucked up by getting rid of him, and he had an amazing year with Washington. So yeah, like this is a good team. Like there's no beating around the bush. Like this is a really good team. Like I said, I think the ceilings are higher with other teams in the Metro. I do have them still making the playoffs though, but I only have them 4th in this division. I just expect that a lot of guys are probably gonna take a step back statistically speaking. Washington will obviously be a threat. And I think when they make the playoffs, they are a dark horse because I think they do have a complete enough roster that they are pretty well built for playoff hockey. And I think they proved that somewhat last year, although they got blown out by Carolina essentially in the second round. But I still like their ceiling in terms of playoffs. But in terms of regular season, I don't think they're going to be quite as a sexy team. They're not going to be as successful as last year. So that's why I have them 4th in the Metro Division, but I obviously still have them as a playoff team. Coming in at 3rd in the Metro Division, basically I have 3, 4, 5 neck and neck from each other. But I'm going with the Columbus Blue Jackets to be a top 3 team in the Metro. I think a lot of people think that last season was sort of fluky, especially offensively speaking, but honestly, I think they're a talented enough roster that I think they can, in fact, build off of last year and take yet another step forward. So I have them 3rd in the Metro with 97 points. I think they're a loaded offensive team. Obviously, you have guys like Kirill Marchenko, who had his best season, and I think he's going to continue to build on that and be a point-per-game guy for years to come. Zach Werenski emerged as one of the best defensemen in the league. I mean, he was already knocking on the door, but this past season, he was just fantastic. And a lot of people think he might regress. I don't think so. I think he is going to be a perennial point-per-game defenseman and going to be surefire top 5 in the league for several years to come. Adam Fantilli kind of broke out over 30 goals, 50 points, being a former 2nd overall pick. I think there's another level for him to get to, so I expect him to take another step. Sean Monahan was coming off a good season, although, he missed time with injury, but when he was healthy, he was basically a point per game. So if he's healthy this season, I could see him having an even better offensive year and get like 70 plus points if he's healthy. Ken Johnson, again, another young guy. A lot of great forwards on this team. Obviously, they proved it last year, and I expect more of the same. On the blue line, I don't think they're that bad. I don't think they're like the best defensive team in the league, but they're far from the worst. Obviously, with Werenski leading the way, they're going to be in a good position. Dante Fabro had a great season. Ivan Provorov was much better this year as well. They got some guys that they can build around moving forward. Between the pipes, though, and this is the key factor. This is a big reason why I think Columbus can take that next step, because Jet Greaves, to me, I think is going to be the starter this season. And, I mean, in a small sample size over his first 3 years in his NHL career, hasn't really played many games. I think he's played like 21 games total. But he hasn't looked out of place at all. And I think he is capable of taking on a bigger role at the NHL level, just because the other options they have just haven't been cutting it. Obviously, Elvis Merzlikins just hasn't really looked like a starting caliber goaltender, to be quite frank. So I think Jet Greaves is in line to be a starter, and I'm particularly high on him, and I think he's going to be really solid this year. So as long as they get good goaltending and that offense is sustainable, I think there's no reason why Columbus shouldn't be better than they were last year. And if they are a 95-plus point team, I think that should be enough for them to make the playoffs in the East. So I got them with 97 points and a top 3 spot in the Metro Division. High on the Blue Jackets this year, and I think they're going to be an underrated team, a team that no one is really going to see coming this year. So I got them 3rd in the Metro. And as for 2nd in the Metro, I got the Rangers with the bounce back. I think they're going to be way better than they were last year. They obviously greatly disappointed, only 85 points. I got them with a solid 103 points. Will be once again a top 10 team in the league. They're not going to be the President's Trophy winning team they were 2 years ago, but I think with Mike Sullivan behind the bench, I think a new voice there in terms of their coaching, I think is going to kind of light a fire under these guys. And the moves they've made this offseason, I think, is going to rejuvenate the team as well. I mean, Vladislav Gavrikov, I think, is the perfect D partner for Adam Fox, and I think the defense is going to be significantly better because of that. And up front, I mean, I still think their top six has a ton of potential. I mean, they acquired JT Miller from the Canucks late last season, and he is still a point per game player. They just named him captain as well, which I actually think is a really good move because JT Miller is a very hard-nosed, hard-working guy, and he is going to be a guy to leave this team accountable. So I honestly really like that move, and obviously he's a fantastic player. They still have Artemi Panarin. I know he's like 33 years old now, so maybe like this year was a sign of his best years being behind him. I mean, it was going to be hard for him to replicate the 120-point season he had a couple years ago, but this year only getting 89. I still think he's going to hover somewhere in a 90 to 100-point range. He's still one of the better wingers in the league, in my opinion. I think Mika Zibanejad is going to have a massive bounce-back season and flirt with a point per game once again. Adam Fox will be better than his 62-point season, I believe he had, and he should be a 75, 80-point defenseman. Vincent Trocheck, I think, is capable of a bit more as the number 2 center. Alexis Lafreniere, I think, is going to bounce back. I just think as a whole, the entire Rangers team is due for a bounce back, and including their MVP, Igor Shesterkin. If you saw my bold predictions video, I think Igor is going to have a massive season. I think he's going to win the Vezina, and I think he's going to win the Hart Trophy because he is going to ultimately be the reason or the main reason why the Rangers complete their bounce back season and get back into the playoffs. I think Igor Shesterkin is easily a top 3 goaltender in this league. And with him between the pipes playing at a high level that we know he can play at, I think the Rangers can be in conversations to winning the Stanley Cup. I think they could be a contender with that guy alone putting the team on his back. Yeah, that's basically all I got for the Rangers. I just think they have the recipe for success this year. And quite simply, they're going to bounce back. I got them second in the Metro, 103 points. But winning the Metro division, I don't know if this is a hot take. I'm not sure if a lot of people are as high on the Devils as I am, but I'm taking the New Jersey Devils to win the division. I got them just barely getting it over the Rangers. I have them with 105 points. Yeah, I think they're when healthy, they're one of the best teams in the league. I think having injuries to key players last year, long-term injuries as well to Jack Hughes and Luke Hughes and obviously Dougie Hamilton. I think those are big losses, and obviously those are big reasons why the Devils were kind of held back in terms of what their potential actually was. They only had 91 points last year. They were third in the Metro, especially with their injuries. No one really gave them a chance in the first round. And of course, they ended up losing in 5 games to the Hurricanes. But like I said, a healthy team capable of way more. And I think they have the potential to go off. Now, I think their one weakness is maybe they need a little bit more punch up front. Like they weren't a particularly great offensive team last year. And I think if they add maybe another top 6 forward, it can really take them to the next level. But when you have guys like Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier, Timo Meier, who's capable of way more, like I don't think there's really that much of an excuse. I think this team should be able to score quite a bit more goals this upcoming season. Evgeny Danov's a fine addition. I don't necessarily like him in a top 6 role, but again, in a situation where he plays with good talent, he could be in for a pretty good season. Connor Brown, I think, is an underrated addition, though, for their bottom 6. I think Paul Cotter's probably the most underrated player on the team as well. Had a pretty decent year. And even defensively speaking, quite frankly, I think they're one of the best defensive teams in the league. They had stretches where they just basically shut down their opponents, and I think their D is a big reason why. I mean, I think obviously with Hamilton and Luke Hughes leading the way, they're more of an offensive guys, but obviously they need those point producer guys. But in terms of the rest of their blue line, very good shutdown guys like Brendan Dillon and Jonas Siegenthaler, who I think is extremely underrated. Brett Pesce, obviously, coming over from the Hurricanes. He made an immediate impact as well. Simone Nemec is still young, still has a ton of potential. Seamus Casey, if he maybe takes a jump and finally gets into the lineup full time, I think he has a ton of potential as well. Very solid defense. And then in goal, even though it's an older tandem, I think Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen are a solid tandem to kind of build around. Those two have been pretty good goaltenders throughout the majority of their season. Not the most elite of elite, but steady in terms of what they do. I mean, Jake Allen as a backup is probably one of the better ones in the league, and honestly, he probably outplayed Jacob Markstrom. But Jacob Markstrom, I still think there's some good seasons left in him, even though last year was okay, not great, but he was okay. I think he'll have a much better season, quite frankly. And I think because of the defense in front of them, both those guys should have probably way better numbers this year, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm pretty high on the Devils. I think overall, a very good team, well-balanced team. And if healthy, I think they're capable of doing some pretty special things. So for that reason, I'm going with the Devils to win the Metro Division. I got them with 105 points on the year. So with that, that is going to wrap up my divisional standings predictions videos. Obviously, this one being the Metropolitan Division standings predictions. So yeah, let me know all your thoughts down in the comments section if you agree or disagree with my rankings. And if so, feel free to give me your own rankings. Where do you have all these teams ranked in the division? Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, click like. If you really liked it, click subscribe. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next one.